Welcome to Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha, where you can hear your favorite performers talk about how they got started, their careers, and everything in between. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Spotify at Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha, and on my main Broadway account at Broadway_Corner on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy. Well, hi everyone, welcome back to Broadway Corner with Ashley Ha. I'm so happy you're here. We're coming to you live from the Robert Studio Theater here at the Calderwood Pavilion, and never done an interview in a theater, but first for everything. So thanks, Jim, for setting all this up. And we're talking to a star of SpeakEasy Stage's production of A Man of No Importance. He plays the theater-loving Mr. Carney. It's Sam Simahk. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, how are you, Sam? How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. You know, we have a week and a half left of the run, and we're all having a great time. You know, it's such an immersive sort of experience. We're playing characters in the show, and then I duck off, I grab my guitar, and I come back out, I play a few songs, and support my fellow, my cast members here. And yeah, it's just a real blast. We're all having a great time.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're in the middle of, there's seats on this side, there's seats on this side. You can't see it, there's seats behind, obviously, too. But it's just a very unique theater experience, I think.
Yeah.
And we'll get to talk all about that, of course. But first, I'll give you a little bit of background about Sam. So Sam is an actor, singer, musician, and writer based in New York City. He's returning to SpeakEasy and A Man of No Importance after having appeared in Big Fish and Small Mouth Sounds. Other Boston credits, Into the Woods, Sweeney Todd, Sondheim on Sondheim, and She Loves Me. His Broadway credits are Into the Woods and Carousel. And national tour credits are Into the Woods, My Fair Lady, and The King and I. His most recent credits, after all those credits, include the Off-Broadway revival of See What I Wanna See and the American Repertory Theater's Gatsby and American Myth. When he's not on stage, he may be wandering aimlessly with a camera, writing songs that he hides away from all but his closest friends, or wasting away with a PlayStation controller in his hands. All of those are his words, not mine.
You got that? You got me that from my website.
Yes, I did. Got to do research, and you know what? We're all human. I think that's like, kind of browns you out as a, person behind, behind obviously all the performing aspects. But it's so good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Beautiful Boston. It's getting warmer.
Yeah, finally.
Warmer, finally.
Yeah.
I was able to walk here and not have to wear a giant parka, which is obviously great. But it's just great to see you. And I know you did some press this morning, so just how are you feeling today?
Oh, great! It's a fun day. We were at WGBH.
Yeah.
Or I think just GBH now. Do they get rid of the W? I don't know.
Who knows?
But yeah, saw Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, who I've listened to for years on Boston's NPR. So it's fun to be there.
Yeah. No, it's amazing that you get to, talk so much about this great show. I mean, look at how beautiful everything is.
It's just beautiful.
Just a spectacle of I don't even know how to explain it, just warmth. But anyway, before we get to all of that, can you just talk about your background, maybe just where you grew up, kind of where you went to school and how you discovered theater?
Sure, yeah. So I'm from Ashburnham, Massachusetts, which is a small town in northern central part of the state. I grew up doing theater at a community theater nearby in Gardner, Massachusetts. It's called Theater at the Mount, run out of Mount Wachusett Community College, and that's why they call it that. But they have a summer theater camp. They have a few summer theater camps. They have a one for little kids, and then starting at, I think, 2nd or 3rd grade through 8th grade, and then they have one for high school students. And I was a really dramatic musical kid, and my mom thought to enroll me in this drama camp. I think by the time I got into it, I was in the middle camp. So I was in 3rd grade, and I started doing these shows. And yeah, I just loved it. I fell right into it. And in addition to, they're really smart about how they do this. And the producer there, Gail Steele, who's still producing there, she was there when I was a little kid. But, she has this great system set up. If you're a kid that's really interested in theater and you're going to these drama camps, they say, hey, you should come and audition for the kids' shows. And so they have the kids' shows in the spring and the fall. And then when you are doing all the kids' shows, they're like, hey, you should come audition for the Christmas show. And so you go and you do the Christmas show. And then by the time you're 14, 15, they're like, oh, you should come and audition for all the adult shows. And so, there's this pipeline from being a 3rd grader in summer camp into then being in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat when you're 13, and then all of a sudden I was Huck Finn in Big River when I was 17, and so that really gave me, that was an informal training ground for musical theater for me. And it was not, I didn't have any formal lessons. I didn't have any acting training. I didn't have any voice lessons till I went to college. I took one tap class that I was a disaster in. Yeah, I didn't have any formal training. It was all sort of mimicry and seeing, the people that I admired, friends of mine in community theater, sort of mimicking what they do, and then listening to cast recordings and mimicking John Raitt on the Carousel cast recording, or listening to Rent in high school and like driving to class and singing along with, trying to make up all the, mimic all the voices of being Roger in this and then Mark in this one. And then through that, I just sort of like fell into some decent vocal habits, which was very lucky. I think a lot of people can sort of go the other way, but yeah, so it was mostly mimicry, and then I got to school. I went to Emerson College here in town for musical theater, and loved it. I had a great experience there. Really formalized all that, formalized all that informal training into real, tangible, a toolbox of skills that I could use in pursuit of a career. And so that's basically how I got started and where I went to school, and moved to New York shortly after graduating. And then I came back to Boston in my late 20s. I was here doing Into the Woods at the Lyric Stage Company, and then things really started to roll from there. Paul Dagneau, who's about to retire here, cast me in Big Fish at SpeakEasy. It was over at the other theater in the Wimberley, which was the biggest space that I'd performed in at that point, and the most responsibility I'd had in a show up to that point. I just remember opening night, I don't think we had gotten a full dress rehearsal in after tech, and so our first dress rehearsal was opening night, and so I was just a wreck. I was so nervous. And now looking back, I can kind of laugh at that, but yeah, no, I have had such a great time so far, and I hope that continues.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I hope so too. I think you've been doing when you look at your credits, it's just all these incredible things that have just continued to grow, and especially this is just so cool to finally get to see you in a show. Because I mean, I've been following your career for a little bit, but I'd never seen you on stage until a couple weeks ago, and so it was like, okay, putting the face to a performance and finally getting to observe that was really cool.
Well, thank you.
And you mentioned that you went to Emerson, which is like 20 minutes away by walking. So how does it feel to be returning to Boston?
Oh, I love it. I mean, my family's all in central Massachusetts. My older sister, my younger brother, my parents they're still in the house where I grew up. They're in the house that my mom grew up in. So we're established in Massachusetts. So coming back to Boston is always so nice to be close to family. I've spent a lot of time out there, and my favorite role that I've ever played is Uncle Sam, and so I have a niece and nephew in Leominster that I just love the crap out of, and they're just, so getting to visit them is fantastic. But coming back to Boston specifically and doing theater here is so special. I credit Boston with giving me my start. I credit that production of Into the Woods with sort of getting everything rolling, and I played Rapunzel's Prince there. So here's a fun story. So when I did Into the Woods at the Lyric, I was Rapunzel's Prince, which is such a gem of a role. He's in 15 minutes of the show, has all these great comedic moments in the agony numbers, and so that for not a lot of work, I got a lot of credit, which was more to do with Stephen Sondheim's writing and James Lapine's writing, but the late Spiro Valudos' directing it was a beautiful production of a great show. But from that, a lot of theater companies started reaching out, and Paul wanted me to audition for Big Fish, and then Bevan O'Gara, who directed me in Small Mouth Sounds, she was at that point she was casting over the Huntington. And so she would have me audition for everything at the Huntington, and I eventually got into a production of A Little Night Music there that sort of led to a bunch of other things. So it was really like this long pipeline that was incredible. But 10 years later, almost 10 years after I played Rapunzel's Prince, at the Lyric, I came back through with the Into the Woods tour.
Yeah, yes.
And for the second week, we were in Boston for 2 weeks. And for the second week, you know, there were a couple of people who had it in their contract that any extension weeks they weren't able to do because they had to be with their family. And so for the second week, I luckily was able to play Rapunzel's Prince again in Boston almost 10 years later.
Wow.
In the Colonial Theater, which is owned by Emerson.
Yeah.
And so I was on Emerson campus at my alma mater playing this role that I played 10 years before. And it just was such an incredible homecoming experience. And then, you know, now coming back to this production, this was, you know, a year and a half later, but maybe 2 years. Oh God, time flies. But
yeah.
Coming back now, I was just telling Jim in the car ride over here, but it's been so lovely. It's very flattering for Paul Dagneau, who is the artistic director here at SpeakEasy, to say, hey, I'm doing my last show. I'd love for you to be a part of it. Can you audition? That is one of the most flattering things, you know, that I could be asked, is to have an old friend and somebody who was instrumental in getting me started, to have him want me to be a part of this. And so how can you say no to that? Yeah. But then also to come back after the last show I did here was, it was Small Mouth Sounds in 2018. And so 7 years later, you know, Boston, it's a small theater community. It's very tight-knit, and you know, the last thing I did was 7 years ago, and then to come back and be welcomed in with open arms and still be a part of the Boston theater community is, man, Boston, y'all know how to make a guy feel welcome, you know? So it's really been a real gift of a production.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think your story just goes to show like how important, you know, these relationships are that we form, you know, I guess when we're younger or even when you're a little older. It's just like the relationships that you continue to build, and, you know, it leads to other things. And it's not like, oh, I'm just talking to you to, you know, get something out of you. It's like, no, I'm genuinely want to know you. And then, you know, if good people want to work with good people. So it's just when you continue on with that, it's just how can you go wrong? Right. And just Boston, I mean, I've already met so many people, and there's still so many people to know, and so many amazing theater companies that are here. And it just shows like how, you know, small the communities can be and how important community can be, which is also a theme I think in this show that is really important.
Very much.
You know, with community and just everything that has to do with just supporting each other. But before we get to that, when I first started following you, I said it was because you joined the star-studded revival of Into the Woods, and I was like following everybody. And I don't think I told you, but I saw the City Center production, you know, before you joined. That was the first time I'd ever seen Into the Woods, like really. Because I saw the movie when I was like little, had like no idea what was going on. I can't remember a single part of it.
The movie, right?
Yes,
so this is where I feel old, because I was in high school watching it was like the taped for PBS. It was the original. So my first time seeing it at the Woods was Chip Zien and Joanna Gleason and Bernadette Peters. But sorry, go on.
No, you're good. No, so yeah, the movie, you know, with Meryl Streep and everybody, I think that was like the first time I'd technically seen it, but I count, you know, the revival production as being like the first time that I really saw Into the Woods. Soon fell in love. I spent like the summer in New York City doing like a musical theater, you know, program just before I went in the senior year of high school, and I saw Into the Woods there and got to meet a lot of people. Obviously didn't get to meet you yet, but it was just like so cool. And I mean, there was a lot of Asians in the Woods as well, which is such an inspiring thing to have so many Asian people in that cast. But since you got to like be with a lot of Asian people in a non-Asian show, like, can you just talk about like what that was like, and being with your community of also just the understudies of the Woods, and just what that meant to you? Yeah,
I mean, there's something special about both things, right? There's, you know, the first time that I did like a quote-unquote Asian show I was a few years out of college. I did a production of Miss Saigon at the Algonquin Playhouse. And what's beautiful about that is you have people from all these different cultural backgrounds coming together and being Asian together Filipinos and Japanese and Chinese and Thai people all coming together. I'm half Thai, by the way. My dad's from Bangkok. And everybody brings something to the table, and there's so much food, and people are like, hey, come on over after, I'm going to make some adobo. And you're like, all right, cool, I've never had adobo, I'll try it. And now I have that recipe, and it's great. Thanks, Yuki. Yeah, so, you know, so that's really wonderful to have a safe space to be Asian American. And granted, that's like 15 years ago now, right? Yeah. Almost 15 years ago, 10-ish, whatever it is. I can't count anymore. But I didn't have to take math since high school, so.
Same.
But so it's really beautiful, you know, 10, 15 years ago, when we didn't have the opportunities we have now to play Freddie Eynsford Hill in My Fair Lady. Like, that was not really happening for us.
Yeah.
And to be in a production where there's just all of you are together and celebrating being Asian American or being Asian, that's really, really special. Then, of course, later on down the line, you have shows that are casting Asian Americans in traditionally white roles. I played Curly in a production of Oklahoma. That was incredibly special, and that was not an all-Asian cast. It was very multicultural, which is a word you can't say in the federal government anymore. But there, you know, there were people from all different backgrounds in that show, and it really, as opposed to a show where the Curly's coming in and he's done it 10 times, and he's like, I'm just going to sing "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning" and call it a day. All of us never thought we would be in that show, and so we approached it. We attacked the show with such passion that we really made it something special. And then, you know, a few years later, I'm doing Into the Woods on Broadway with Ann Harada, who was a hero of mine. You know,
what a legend.
What a legend. And God, that was just incredible. And you know, I went on for Jack one night. Thank you, Cole Thompson, for taking the night off to go see Mariah Carey, her Christmas concert. Yeah, so he called out. I went on for him. And I had 2 weeks' notice. I got so I had like 30 or 40 people come out to support. Friends from New York, friends from Boston. I just hit my mic, sorry. Okay. My parents came down, my brother and sister and cousin. It was just, you know, very special. But that night, you know, Milky White was played by my good friend Kennedy Kanagawa, and Jack's mother was played by Ann Harada. And so when I went on for Cole, Jack's household was all Asian American.
Oh my
it was me and Ann and Kennedy, and we got a picture, and yeah, it was just so special. And yeah, you know, they told me afterwards, somebody who was down there, Paul, who was another one of the understudies, was like, you know, Ann was crying while you were singing Giants in the Sky. And she looked at me, she said, I never thought that I'd see the day when I'd see something like this. And I didn't either, you know? And yeah, God, it's, I've been very lucky, and I think we're very lucky to exist at this point in the industry, where there's still a lot that needs to change, and there's still a lot of forward movement to be done. I would love to see a principal on Broadway with an Asian accent that is not an Asian role, that the accent is not talked about at all, that it's just a part of who the person is. That's something that does not exist and has never existed, as far as I know. So there's a lot that has to change, you know? But it's way better than being at the time where Mickey Rooney is putting on some buck teeth and getting on screen and being a horrible, racist stereotype of a Japanese man for Breakfast at Tiffany's. You know, so there are all these, you know, slow incremental steps, but I'm glad to have entered the industry at a time when that many incremental steps had already happened, so that I was able to be embraced by the industry instead of pushed away from it. So I feel very lucky.
Yeah, and do you know if you were the first Asian Jack on Broadway? Because I remember Delphi was the first Asian Little Red. I do remember that, but I couldn't remember if you had been the first Asian Jack.
No, I believe that I was.
Okay.
I haven't looked into this myself. I haven't researched it myself. But Delphi Boric, who was one of the understudies and is a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
She was checking it out. She like did the research while I was on stage. Yeah. True,
so I was like,
friend.
I'm like 99% sure that you were the first.
I think so.
You know,
I mean, there haven't been a lot of us. So there haven't been a lot of Jacks on Broadway, but I do think that is true.
Yeah, what a special experience just to, I mean, and to have like such a traditionally like maybe white show, you know, Into the Woods started out very, very white, and you know, to have this change of so many Asian faces in this Broadway revival, I was in awe of just like everybody and could not believe it, because I mean, it's obviously not an Asian show by any means or Asian roles. It's just, here we go, that's it, take it, like just there it is.
And ultimately, you know, all of these things, you know, I think people who are a little more conservative leaning might look at a show and say like, well, you know, this is a white show, and you know, these roles weren't written to be like, oh, this is somebody of European heritage. This is a very European problem. It's not the case. These are very human problems, and any human, you know, the baker and his wife are going through marital problems, and they're going through difficulties in conceiving a child. You can't tell me that is a purely European heritage problem. That is something that is worldwide. If you're trying to have a child and you can't conceive, that is a human problem. The princes who want everything they can't have and then get tired of as soon as they have it, that is also very human. That I would say that's also very American, but it is something. It's a problem that people of privilege have. It's not necessarily something that is purely European. I'm sure that, you know, Kim Jong-un is somebody who is definitely not European, but he wants things he can't have, and as soon as he has them, he wants something more. You know, like, this is, if you have privilege, if you have power, that's who you are. And so Into the Woods, yes, it was traditionally cast with people of European heritage, but I think that what we're experiencing as Broadway diversifies more is an exploration of the idea that these very human problems can be experienced and explored by people of any cultural background.
And even just the fact that like the two princes can be different ethnicities, like starting, you know, with Gavin and Jordan Dobson, I believe, in the city center, and then, you know, Joshua Henry.
Jordan Donica,
Oh, John Donica, sorry. There's so many people in my brain. But and then, you know, to see you, and then also like just anybody could have been in those roles, and it doesn't really necessarily matter, and you just suspend your belief. It's theater.
Yeah, exactly.
Why
you're
is that not,
already standing on stage. You're 10 feet above everyone else. You're wearing costumes that have your name tag on them. You're saying words that were written by somebody else, and you break out into song every 5 minutes. You already suspend so much disbelief, you might as well accept the fact that maybe this mermaid who's half fish could also be black, you know? But some people have a difficult time with that. And,
I think so,
and thoughts and prayers to them.
You know, they'll come up, you know, they'll have a reckoning event, I'm sure, eventually. It'll just take a little longer, maybe. But, you know, and also you were a part of See What I Want to See, which was all Asian American, or all AAPI cast. I mean, so many people that I know and love and respect were in that show. And it's a fascinating production. And I believe, like, because, last semester, we did a risk unit for my musical theater, like, vocal, like, performance class. And it was just to do a song that's, like, really challenging or something that was just hard. And so my teacher gave all of us songs, and he gave me See What I Want to See from See What I Want to See. And, to do it in context is still hard. To do it out of context was, like, the most difficult thing possible. And I was just like, what is this? What am I doing? I heard the song the first time, and I was like, what did I just listen to? What's going on? And, you know, I had to look at all of the different, like, stagings and productions of it and figure out how to, like, do this for my musical theater class, where I'm in a random classroom in, you know, Boston, just singing about something that I'm a little confused about. And it was just such a challenge. And I'm sure, like, I haven't gotten the chance to listen to the full thing, but I'm sure, like, just judging based on that, it's a hard show to do.
Oh, yeah, it's very hard. Musically, I mean, it's Michael John LaChiusa, so it's very musically dense and complex. Beautiful, incredible stuff.
Yeah.
Super fun. And, you know, the show is kind of 3 different stories.
Yeah.
The first song in each act is these 2 lovers that have been discovered, and they are meeting for one last time, and they're going to kill each other.
Yeah.
You know, secretly. The other one doesn't know that the other one's killing him. But the first one is sung from the woman's perspective. The second act, the song is sung from the man's perspective. And in our production, the singer was sort of in this out-of-body experience, and the person who was in the moment was having this final tryst with a puppet. And so we had, in the first act, we had Japanese bunraku puppet, and in the second act, we had Southeast Asian shadow puppets. And so it was a very interesting concept. Emilio Ramos, brilliant director, was, you know, a good friend of mine. But it was a brilliant production. And then working with some old friends like Marina Kondo, who I know from the King and I tour. And she subletted my apartment when I went out on the road with My Fair Lady. So we've known each other for years.
Yeah.
And then people that I've looked up to for a long time, like Ann Sanders, or people that I've known through the industry for years and just have never worked together, like Kelvin Moon Lowe.
Yeah.
And so being all of us in one place and working together and just having a blast, it was so fun.
Yeah.
And I got to, this is like my pseudo-villain era right now.
Yes,
I'm digging
so.
it. But I played a really gross guy in the first act, and it was so fun. It's so fun to be gross and mean and cruel and
you know, it's the ways that
vicious.
we stretch ourselves as like both actors and people. Just be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's not you, obviously. You kind of take yourself out of it in a way.
Yeah.
But
You take yourself out of it, and you try and access a part of yourself that you might not like very much.
Yeah.
That all of us have these sort of animal impulses that we have trained ourselves out of as to exist in society, and we do that from preschool onward.
Yeah.
Before that, you know, your parents hopefully teach you how to be a decent person.
Yeah.
And so you push away all these things, but then when you are playing Sweeney Todd, or you're playing Jimmy Mako in See What I Want to See, it gives you the permission, the license to access these parts of your id that are not good parts that you don't want to actually showcase in real life, but you're able to explore them on stage in a safe space.
Yeah.
And I think it's very healthy. I think that it's healthy to let those parts out once in a while.
Yeah. Instead of keeping it all balled up, you know. So it has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And as actors, I think we do have the benefit of getting to really express all these emotions that a lot of normal people don't get to.
Yeah.
And just getting to observe that and see what it does, I guess, to us. But I know, like, the show, even the original, had to do, I believe, was like, there was something around it that had to do with being like they were Japanese or taken from a Japanese like story. I don't exactly remember all the details, but I know the original was obviously not really focused on that. But bringing it back to, you know, I guess, was it 2024 when you guys did it? Or was
yes, this is just this last fall.
Yeah. So getting to bring it back with all Asian cast and having Marina, you know, sing in Japanese, like, and having all those different aspects of bringing in the different Asian puppets, like, what did that feel like, of just getting to reinvent something that maybe was supposed to be ours in the first place?
Yeah, it's a very good point. And so these, you know, it is based on these 3 Japanese short stories. And the first act, after the song with the 2 lovers, the first act is based on Rashomon, which is, it started as a Japanese short story and then was a Kurosawa film. So it's more so based on the film than the short story, I think, but it takes place instead of in feudal Japan, it takes place in 1950s New York City. And so Michael John LaChiusa took these Asian stories and then turned, like, they were Asian stories and then they became like a New York stories. The second act, I forget the name of the story that it's based on, but it takes place also in Central Park, but a year after the terrorist attacks on 9/11. So it's a very New York story. The musical is it anyway. But the source material is Japanese. And so to come at it from an Asian perspective and with Asian cast members and all Asian cast was really, really, it was amazing to sort of reclaim that. And Marina Kondo, in addition to singing Japanese, she actually did the translations.
Yes.
So she did that herself. Brilliant, brilliant woman.
Yeah.
And
I love her.
yeah,
Just one of the best.
How can you not? How can you not?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh my gosh, I mean, I was so bummed that I couldn't go and see it because I remember seeing the casting and be like, I know who that person is, I know who this person is, I know this person. Like, I mean, Kelvin Munlo, I followed him from being in SpongeBob the musical.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
and he was great in that.
You know, an icon in being Perkins. I was like, wait, this is like all of the things that, you know, I could ever want in a show of just all these brilliant people. And like Marina, you know, being in K-pop and all that and stuff. It's so cool to just see like people that I admire doing such great work. And so now let's talk about a little more about Sondheim. You've done a lot of Sondheim, which
which I love. Cast me in more. I'll do it all the time. I'll do it today. I'll do it well, not tonight. I have a show tonight. But I love Sondheim. That's like that is this. You know, I tell people he's like the Mozart of musical theater, right? Yeah. I mean, it's masterful craftsmanship, and writing a musical is so hard, and you can tell by watching a musical, half of them are not very good. You know, it's hard to do. It's really hard to take a book scene and make that, you know, weave it into a song and weave it out of a song, and you know, to have these flawless transitions from speaking to singing. This is where you lose a lot of people. It's why, you know, a lot of people that don't see musicals or they think they don't like musicals, they're like, oh, I don't like musicals. I don't get why people just, you know, just break into song. It's not real life. It's like, of course it's not real life. It's a show. You watch a movie. It's not real life. Kind of going on a tangent here. But okay. Sondheim and his collaborators are masters at that. They take these brilliant scenes, whether they're written by James Lapine or Hugh Wheeler or whoever is writing the book, weave it into a song with, you know, brilliant lyrics by Stephen Sondheim, brilliant music most of the time, and not most of the time it's brilliant. Most of the time the brilliant music is written by Stephen Sondheim. Sometimes it's written by Julie Stein or somebody else, you know. But so. Yeah, I mean, it's just some of the best stuff to perform. And there are moments of speakiness, there are moments of being able to unleash your vocal power. You know, if you're playing, I played Antony and Sweeney Todd over at the Lyric, which is a few blocks away. And, you know, you get one of the best, most beautiful songs in musical theater with Joanna. And then you get these really fun, pattery, speaky things like Kiss Me and... oh, what is it now? Miss and Kiss Me and what is it? Look at me, look at me. You know, there's just such brilliant stuff, and he knows, well, he knew really how to access human neuroses and what sort of things are engaging to project about a character's inner life. He really gets to the nitty-gritty of like what it is to be human in a way that some writers might be like, oh, maybe we can put a fun song here about driving a car or something. It's like, well, you know, Sondheim would be like, well, what does it feel like to be the passenger in this person's car? And maybe you're feeling out of control and it takes you on this journey about your parents or whatever. And like, he's very, very thoughtful. And being able to work on so many different shows between Into the Woods and Sweeney Todd, which is my favorite show, by the way. Sweeney Todd is, you know, cast me as Sweeney Todd, somebody, I'll do it, you know.
Yes.
But, and Sondheim on Sondheim even, you know, the reviews, getting to work on a bunch of different stuff from different shows.
I mean, there's the one right now, Old Friends, with like Lea Salonga.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's great stuff. And those, you know, you get to like, maybe cut out the songs that not everybody knows or not everybody likes. Like, you know, not everybody wants to see Chrysanthemum Tea from Pacific Overtures, although I love it. I love Chrysanthemum Tea. But, you know, so you get Franklin Shepherd Inc. You get to sing Franklin Shepherd Inc. from Merrily We Roll Along in one scene, and then you get to sing a song that was cut from Company in the next scene. And so, you know, doing the reviews are fun too, but yeah, that material, getting to work on that yeah, it's like if you're a race car driver and you get behind the wheel of a Ferrari or something. You know, you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing here, and all my training goes into play, and all the words fall into the right place, and I don't need to work to manufacture anything because it's all just there, and I don't have to pretend to like the material because it's already genius.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you find that it comes easy, or is it like still difficult for you, since you've done so much of his work and you seem to know, obviously you've like those are Sweeney's your favorite show, so it's like when it comes to playing that, do you feel like when you get behind and you get to like try, does it come easy, or is it still like more just difficult to act? Because some of his songs are like at its core just very difficult to act because they are so complicated, and they go on such deep journeys. I remember, like, you know, when I was obsessed with Into the Woods, of course, just like working on all those songs with my voice teacher and trying to like crack into like the core of all these songs that seem simple on the outside, but when you get into them, it's really hard. So like, what is, I guess, your process when you approach a Sondheim show, because it is so difficult?
Yeah, and I mean, it is difficult, and it's I would say that the difficulty with Sondheim material isn't necessarily accessing the emotions necessary, because the music and the lyrics work so well to take you to that place. And so you can just kind of do all the work of the lyric and the musical analysis to, you know, you sort of chip away at all the wrong decisions, you get rid of all those, and you just focus in on the text. And it does the work for you. But the difficult thing about Sondheim is a lot of the time it's the actual physical difficulty, right? Pardon me, is everybody here? Because if everybody's here, you know, and or in the case of me, I've never played Amy in company, but
could
you
be
know,
Jamie.
Could be Jamie, yeah, in the revival. But you know, I would wake up when I first joined the Broadway company. I would wake up at 4 a.m. with but it isn't my fault. It was given those beans. He persuaded me to trade away my cow for beans. Without those beans, there would have been no stock to get up with the giants in the first place. Wait a minute, magic. Beans for a calf so old that you had to tell a lot to sell what you told, where they were worthless. Beans were they oversold. Because I was understudying both Jack and the Baker, and Cinderella's Prince, and Milky White, and the Steward on Broadway. And then I understudied different roles on the tour. So my brain is full of Into the Woods.
Yes.
But so it's difficult stuff, right? So it's difficult to get the words out and to memorize some things because it's so wordy. But at the same time, once you start to remember these words, they just flow because they're so dutifully written down to the letter, down to the punctuation mark. And the emphasis is on the right syllable. But it isn't my fault. I was given those beans. You persuaded me to trade away my cow for beans. All the emphasis goes in the right spot. And so because he writes the music and the lyrics, unless you're talking like Gypsy or one of the early things that he was writing with collaborators, because he has such control over the lyrics and the music, he can put the lyrical emphasis where it should be musically, and there's no contradiction there. And so it kind of flows. So yes, it is difficult, but at the same time, once you get past the initial physical difficulty of it, and you delve into the verbs and the sort of transitional words that you use to like change the beats and everything, there's all like, you know, musical theater text analysis speak. It's like I'm talking to one of my students or something. But once you delve into the analysis side of things, all of the dramatic work is done for you to some extent, and then you can bring your own sense of personality and your own individuality to it. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's like doing Shakespeare or something, where it's just so craftful that you just kind of have to get out of the way of it and let it sing through you. Yeah.
No, I think that's, I mean, obviously Sondheim he's just such a genius, and he's created so much for us to really dive into and just observe, and like to really get into the nitty-gritty of like trying to capture human emotion and put it out and make it seem like your confusing thoughts are like translating to the audience is such a difficult thing. I mean, we're doing like a comedy unit in a little bit, and I was like, I could try doing Getting Married Today, but I don't think I can do it. Like, at least not right now.
You
I'm
totally
like,
can.
maybe if I can like speak words sometimes. But
well, it's funny because it is so fast, and you're like, oh, I can never sing that fast. But people actually talk that fast, especially when they're kind of freaking out, if they're on the verge of an anxiety attack. You know, you can really. I talk fast anyway. You might have noticed. There's also me being hyped up on caffeine. So
it's just getting into locking in, as people say all the time. I always say I'm unlocked, but when you can lock in, it's really, really good stuff, and having all that emotional prep is also very helpful. But now let's talk about why we're here. A man of no importance. So you play Mr. Carney. What kind of drew you to this character? Because I know, was it probably just like an offer of you, like, hey, you want to play this character in this show?
Well,
but
I did have to audition.
Okay.
It might have been semi-formal, but I did send in a tape. Yeah, I mean, Paul made it clear from the beginning that he was interested in me for Carney, and he had me audition for it. And it's such a fun role. There are moments where I just disappear for like 45 minutes as a character. I come back in and I'm playing guitar for other people's songs and everything. But and then they're talking about me, about Carney, like, where's Carney? Oh, he's doing this, so he's doing that. He's saying that this is.
You're like, I'm over here.
Yeah, I just took my glasses off. I don't know if you noticed, but this mysterious guitarist has been Carney the whole time.
It's giving this, Superman. Like
yeah, a little bit. You don't recognize me if I'm wearing the same jacket and the same hat. But yeah, no, he's a character who he loves the sound of his own voice, and he loves the sound of his own name. He says it a few times. He's the only character that says his own name multiple times in the show.
Yeah.
The full William Carney. He loves saying, and he is super pious to a fault, and uses his religiosity. And not necessarily his faith. I think everybody in the character, every character in the show, to some extent, is a person of faith, and everybody is an Irish Catholic person in Dublin in the '60s. But William Carney's form of religiosity is one of self-importance and self-centering, and he's somebody who inflicts his religious belief on others, instead of having it be an internal thing, an internal personal relationship with yourself and the universe.
He's a man of self-importance.
He's a man of self-importance, very much. And he is somebody who, if he gets offended by something, if he doesn't think that something should happen, that if he doesn't want to experience something himself, he doesn't think that anybody should experience it. I think we have a lot of people like that in the world. We have a lot of people like that in America. And that's something that really drew me to the character, was sort of exploring that aspect of taking one's own sense of morality and inflicting it on other people, enforcing it on other people, and saying, I'm offended by this word. You can't use it. I'm offended by this action. You can't do it. Instead of, I wouldn't do that myself, so I'm not going to do that, but you can do it if you want to, which is a more libertarian view on things. I'm not a libertarian. I'm a total socialist. Tell that to everybody. I don't care. They'll disappear me in a second. But but that's the thing, is that my personal belief is that everybody should be free to do anything that they want to do, as long as it's a peaceful thing and it doesn't hurt anybody. But William Carney is somebody who does not feel that way, and he's somebody who, is very conservative, and that is clearly not who I am. And like I said, it's fun to explore parts of yourself that are not who you are, or who you show to the world. And another thing, in that same vein, I think that actors are very capable of, or become very capable of, great empathy, because we have to tackle roles like this at some time, and you're not supposed to judge your character. Like I say very regularly, like William Carney and I would not be friends. If we went to high school together, we would have unfriended each other on Facebook in 2020. If not before then. But at the same time, you're not supposed to judge your characters, right? You're supposed to. It's not that your character is evil, so your character is feeling out of place, and he's trying to fit in a way, or he's trying to grasp onto something that he feels is slipping out of his hands. You find the empathy for these characters, and so that you can portray them with some grace, and so they're actual humans and not caricatures. And so that's what's fun about Carney is his self-importance, his harmful piety, and just the idea that maybe I can find some empathy for people who do that, and understand where they're coming from, while also not necessarily agreeing with it.
Yeah. No, I think that's, I mean, what a thing to say, in our climate right now that we're just going through of like, I think, it is important to understand each other and get where we're coming from. Be like, we don't agree, but I can understand you and see where you're coming from, and not just, know that maybe we won't agree and we'll never agree, but like we can live our own lives, and your life doesn't have to affect mine in any way. And just like, I think understanding that at its core is maybe the most important thing that people need to do right now, of just having empathy for each other. I think that's the biggest thing. And
that's what lends itself to existing in society, right? It's about community. And coming back to the show, Carney, I don't want to give away any spoilers in case anybody comes to see this in the last week and they don't know the show, but Carney, for all of his moral high ground and enforcing his beliefs into the behaviors of other people, he seeks a place of high standing in his community, and I don't think he ever gets it. The community is the group of people that rallies around the individual, that provides support for somebody in need. And in this show, you see that. And in order to exist in society, you have to have that empathy. You have to find the common ground, and you have to decide to support one another, even if you don't necessarily understand their decisions. And I think that's what this show is about at its core.
And since this show was written, so long ago, going with that, what do you think is the most relevant? I mean, I guess we kind of did discuss it, but what do you think is like the most important thing that people need to learn from this show today?
I think if people were walking out of this taking one or two things from the show, I think it's the importance of being yourself, being true to yourself, showing up as your own authentic self as much as possible, not just for yourself, but for your community. That's Alfie Burns' journey in this story, is figuring out how to be his own true authentic self for himself and his community. And then I think, so it's not only that, how to be yourself, but how to embrace the people that are doing that, and how to be a member of the community, to not just be your own best self, but to support others in their journey to be their best authentic self. I think that's the most important thing about the show. And everything else is fun, and it's musical, it's beautiful, it's a beautiful story, and with beautiful music and an incredible cast. And I hope that people come see the last week and a half that we have, because I think that it's a great story that's worth telling and worth listening to.
Definitely.
Done by a great group of people, and I couldn't ask for better cast members here, castmates, so it's super fun. Yeah,
and since the show is done in like this thrust staging situation where you really bring everyone into the story more so than you would in a normal like staging of the show, and do you have like a favorite moment in the show that just, either it could be, I guess, with the immersiveness of it, or just whatever you want?
I have a few. There are a few fun things. I mean, I have so much fun in this show. I love my sort of selfish, like, my favorite part that I do. Well, I have a couple. There's Going Up, which is the early song, and this is the only time, I make eye contact with audience members. It's so intimate that you can see every face even in the back row. And which is kind of scary for me. It's way easier to stand in front of 4,000 people in a black void that you can't see anything except maybe the first couple of rows.
Yeah.
And the only things you can see are the exit signs in the back of the row. Yeah, so it's very intimate. I can see everybody. And when we're narrating, we come out and we're like narrators at various points. It's a rainy Dublin morning, skies are leaden gray. And at that point, we're like looking at the audience and like, this is the story that we're telling. We're all in this journey together, and that's fun. And it's really, you know, we're the narrators in that moment. And then going up is the only time that I'm aware of. Yeah, I think it's the only time that we're both in character as the characters that not narrators, but like the central characters of the story. And we're making eye contact with the audience because we're sort of envisioning this, you know, what it is to be on stage. And William Carney, who is so performative and presentational, I start out the song with like this little monologue about like, the St. Imelda's players have the distinct privilege of presenting for your play-going perusal, you know, and so I'm like, you know, grandstanding for the audience, and then I have a little song and dance moment, and that's super fun and very funny, and it's fun to connect with the audience in that as I have my little butcher cleaver and I'm doing a little song and dance and seeing some of the joy on some people's faces. Some people are just like, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to look for somebody who's smiling.
Or you just really lean into that and be like, hey.
Yeah, you're going to enjoy this. But it's super fun. And then, you know, there's later on in what would be the second act if we had a, you know, where sort of Carney's vindictive piety comes into play. It's always fun to have a little villain moment, and so that's very fun. But then, you know, and I love all these other moments too. I love standing back here and playing guitar while Billy Milady sings "The Cuddles Mary Gave," or sitting on the stool over there and playing guitar for my old friend Amy Doherty, who's singing her song, and it's one of the hardest songs I've ever played on guitar, and it's made me a better guitarist. So sitting up there and like, hey, I've actually gotten kind of good at this. I'm actually a decent guitarist. That's kind of a fun moment for me is supporting my friends and not messing up their songs was my biggest fear. My biggest fear when I was told, oh, you're going to play guitar too, is like, oh, I hope I don't screw it up for them. But it's you know, being part of the orchestra, being part of the band, and supporting and listening to my colleagues breathe and like playing the next chord for them. It's something that I have never done on stage, and it's super fun. Yeah, so there's a little bit of everything. You know, I love the moments of being Carney. I love the moments of being nondescript guitarist in the back. Just having a blast. It's a fun show.
That was like a surprising thing, was seeing everyone play instruments. Because I mean, there's been productions like that. I know someone did that like a long time ago, a company they did where everyone played an instrument, and I'm like, oh my God, these people can act and they can play instruments. It makes me feel bad about myself, but it's okay because you know what, we're all trying.
Yeah. And everybody, I think they're just, people talk about like triple threats and everything, and I think the general understanding of triple threat is like Gene Kelly, right? It's somebody who acts, sings, and dances. But there are many other things that you can do that are threats, or that are, I mean, really they're skills, right? If you speak American Sign Language, that opens up a bunch of opportunities. You can do tribes. You can do, you know, plays that feature sign language. If you speak another language, if you play a musical instrument, or if you sight read music very well, these are other threats. These are other skills that you can apply, and that's what I've found. I am not a good dancer, and I'm lucky that I've made it this far.
Well, you know, you went through a BFA program. You had to do that early morning ballet, I'm sure. Yes,
when I wasn't skipping, which I'm sorry, Maggie, I'm sorry. Yeah, I am not a great dancer, and am not always the most graceful person on stage. I can move.
I think you're very smooth in this show,
Thank
though.
you.
I think
you know, this is luckily Elise Robbins
good.
Is a friend of mine, our choreographer, and so she knows we've worked together. She knows what I'm capable of, and she choreographed things that were right in my wheelhouse.
Yes.
You know, I can do a kickball change till the cows come home. It's great. Yeah. So yes. So you know, there are other things that you can do, and I found in my career that my third threat outside of acting and singing, rather than being dancing, which is more of a threat to me and the safety of people in the general vicinity of me. That's the only way that's a threat. But my third threat was always sight reading and musicianship, which I played piano. I took piano lessons from when I was 7 years old all the way through my senior year in high school, and I play guitar. I'm mostly self-taught. My dad got me started, and then in recent years, my friend Ben has helped me with real guitar music theory. But it's only recently that the guitar has become a thing for me on stage. But being somebody, getting a reputation with certain casting directors as somebody who can learn music in a very short amount of time and be able to perform it that night, or somebody who can learn a song once and then start acting it the second time you sing it is invaluable. And so there are other things you can do outside of playing a guitar on stage, unless you're doing a John Doyle show, which this show, you mentioned the company, that was a John Doyle production as well. So John Doyle is a director in New York who is famous for doing these productions of shows where Sweeney Todd or company, where all the actors are playing instruments, and he did this production, the classic stage production of Man of No Importance, which is this is the version of the show that we're doing. So he took this 2.5, 3 hour 2-act musical and cut it down to an hour 45. Ours is a little longer than that because we added art back in. Art is a song, not artfulness, but so we added a song back in because Paul wanted to have that moment of the community coming together and making the show. And so he got special permission. If you're ever doing a show and you want to add something or you want to take something away, you can't just do it. You have to talk to the estate, or you might get a cease and desist letter.
Be careful, guys.
Be careful. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I just think it is so cool to see people who, have, I guess, the other threats, which just, like you said, skills that are just available. I mean, I wish I could sight read music very well. I'm trying.
Keep working at it. Things take time.
Doing that music lab homework all the time. Just trying my best to, really immerse myself in the world of music, because that's so much of what we do, obviously. And, learning by ear is not always the most efficient. But getting to see everybody, just everywhere. You're people are playing instruments over here, on stage, behind, entering in, and it's such a new experience that I don't think, you said, many things have done that. It's a very, very unique show. And so what has been your favorite part of just getting to have this community within a cast, within a show, and just seeing also how the community of Boston is responding to it?
Oh, I mean, it's just such a joy to do a show about community with a community that I care so much about, and that has given so much to me in care and opportunity, and that's just really special. And then for it to be Paul's last show, it's there's been this outpouring of love and support from the greater Boston theater community, not just the members of the community that are in this space every night working on this show together. But so many people coming after the show, coming to the show and hanging out afterwards and chatting with us about it. And it's been a beautiful production to be a part of. And we're all just having such a great time, whether we're in the spotlight at any given moment or standing off to the side accompanying somebody who's in the spotlight. We're all just here for the community support, here for the show, here to support Paul, and here to just have a great time. And it's just been such a blast. Yeah,
and to kind of wrap up a little bit, this is something completely non-theater related. I know you take a lot of photos, and that's been kind of a thing that I've seen on your social media things. It's just something that you like to do. Obviously, I'm a little more of a video person, but I used to love photography as a kid with my mom's cameras, and just playing around. So when did that start for you? And just kind of what has been the most joyful part of getting to just capture life on a camera.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. It's super fun. I mean, I have a great time with it. And like you, I mean, I was taking photos as a kid all the time. And back then, film, I never had it developed myself, so I don't know how much it cost. You know, it was always like I would just like take a bunch of pictures. My parents would bring it to CVS or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, it was all those like point and shoot, you know, some little cheap $20 thing.
Yeah.
And then I got a smartphone. I got an iPhone when I was like graduating college or something. And at that point, I was like, oh, I never need a camera again because you have a camera on your phone.
Yeah.
And they're bad pictures, everybody. I mean, like they've gotten better.
Yeah.
But the incredible thing about these cameras on your phone is that they're this big, and it's like, wow, I can't believe a camera that's that big takes such good pictures. But it doesn't take as good pictures as a camera that's this big.
Yeah.
And there are like really physical, scientific reasons for that. And you know, during the pandemic, my friend had gotten a film camera, an old used Nikon or Canon or something, and he started taking pictures of us, just like hanging out. And I was like, wow, these are really cool, good pictures. I kind of want to get into this myself. And so I got into film photography and was spending a lot of money getting things developed. And because, you know, film is expensive, developing is expensive. And
it's an expensive hobby.
It is an expensive hobby. But so then I got a fairly decent digital camera. And then the last few shows I've done, I've taken a bunch of pictures. I get permission beforehand, you know, I'm like you know, checking with you know, actors and being like, hey, you know, just so you know, like I like taking candids during rehearsal, and then I'll share them with you for like an opening night gift. Is basically, it's a cheap opening night gift. It's a way of me saving money, but
it's art.
But it's also it's artistic, and what I really love about it is, for me, I've loved acting my whole life. I've loved musical theater my whole life. And then in recent years, I've gotten to certain heights. I've been on Broadway, I've been on tour, to the point where it is fairly corporatized to me. It's, you know, I understand it at an industrial level for all the good and the bad of that. And so for me, as much as I love acting and I love musical theater, it is also my job and it is my career. And there are certain constraints in that I need to like do it in a way that I think will make my career where I want it to be, you know? And with photography, it's a nice way of being able to be artistic and be creative and have something to show for it without having any ties to, oh, I need to get this right or else I won't be able to pay rent next month. It's just for fun. Yeah. And of course now, you know, I am somebody who like is always trying to get more and is always trying to, you know, and so now I'm like, oh, I wonder if I can monetize this. So
yeah, be a photographer and headshots or whatnot.
So in another 10 years, maybe I'll be doing that as well, and then that'll be how I pay rent as well, and then I'll take up watercolors or something or bread baking, and that'll be my new art, you know. But
yeah, no, I always talk about how important it is to like make theater not be your one and only and your everything. I mean, it used to be my everything, I think, when I was a little younger, and that was like all I really had to tie myself to, and the difficult times of being in high school, you know. And then, you know, as you get older, you realize like, oh, I'm doing this for my career now. Like being in college, you're like, I have to do this for an assignment, and like having, you know, these more constraints, and it's not just something that is fun anymore. It's like it becomes work. Right. And so to have other things that you do is so important. Like I love food. That's like, you know, my other thing that I'm just like, oh my God, I can't, you know, love cooking now and stuff like that. But it's just like you have to have something else, or what do you have if theater is your one and only? Right. It's like it's such a blessing to be able to do something also that we love as a job, but it gets taxing. Yeah. It's tiring. I mean, doing, you know, the Broadway schedule, 8 shows a week, that's not for the week. It's like very hard on your body, and so to find like those moments of when you get to really focus on something else is just, I think, the magic of it. And so you know, to see all your photos, it's such a cool thing, especially as someone who's like kind of wanting to get into photography now too. I'm like,
Yeah,
sorry, Mom, I'm trying to buy another camera.
More arts.
More cameras and more, you know, the tech and stuff like that. But it is such a cool thing to be like capturing the world and seeing things that maybe other people don't see.
Yeah.
Just within that. So I think when I saw that you were a photographer, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool and so much fun.
Thank you.
But anyway.
the other thing there is that, you know, it's if you do one thing, and I've met some people that theater is their everything, and I just think it's so dangerous, especially post-pandemic, because it was most of my thing before the pandemic hit. And if, you know, in investing in stock portfolios and whatnot, they tell you you're supposed to diversify your portfolio. And that's like, you know, if you invest all of your money in one company and that company goes bankrupt, you go bankrupt. And so you want to have, you know, diversified things. That's not just for stock portfolios. That also should apply to your friend group. It should apply to the way that you conduct the way that you engage with the world. Because if one thing is your everything, and I learned this during the pandemic, that one thing can get taken away, can get wiped out. Yeah. And we were out of work for a year and a half, where nothing was happening. I was out on tour with My Fair Lady when the pandemic hit,
man,
and then we'll be back in 2 weeks, maybe 4, and that became a year and a half. And if that one thing is your only source of fun and art and beauty and community and friendship, and then it gets taken away, you feel empty. And I felt largely empty for a lot of the pandemic. And so now I try and diversify my portfolio a little bit more than I did in the past, because of that trauma of knowing that it can all just go away. And the government and the people of the country won't necessarily be working to get it back for you. So you kind of have to fend for yourself in that regard, and to think about your mental health and your physical health. And so I do think that while I love theater, and I always will, it's useful to have other things in addition to it.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's like, you know, have a bunch of things to fill your bucket instead of just, you know, one thing.
Yes.
It's just, you know, you're a human being before you're an actor, of course. It's like you have to find those things that bring you joy, so that, you know, that there's, like you said, the stock portfolio. I think that's like, I'm going to steal that. Like, that's an interesting way of looking at it, but it's so true. It's like you have to have other things, or what are you going to do when that gets taken away? I know I didn't listen to musical theater like during the pandemic, like for like a year maybe, because I was just like so sad. And I was not even like doing this as a career yet. I was just like a theater lover and being like, what happened now? And just wondering what to do with myself. But I think, it is just so important to understand how human we are and how like human we have to be to just be happy. It's like we can't also draw all our happiness from theater either. It's like you have to, again, bring all those other things in to create a full life.
Right. But you can derive happiness and joy from this production of A Man of No Importance.
Yes, you can.
Here at SpeakEasy Stage, running through March 22nd.
Yes. Well, anyways, thank you so much for, you know, coming on the pod.
Of
I
course,
guess, as people say. You know, and
Thanks,
just getting
Ashley.
to connect with you has been such a cool thing. I remember
Likewise.
seeing your headshot in the home, and it was like, oh yeah, Sam's in this, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. And just, you know, reminding myself. But how can everyone continue to support you and your artistic journey, whether it be on like social media or just other things you got going on? You can.
Yeah, well, you can Venmo me. Just kidding. I'm on Instagram at Soapbox Sam, SOAPBOXSAM, Soapbox Sam. My website, samsimahk.com, SIMAHK. Yeah, that's pretty much it at this point. I'm not on Twitter or
You're not a
X
TikTok person?
Yeah, I have a TikTok. I've never done anything on TikTok. I go on once a month to watch the videos that my friend sends me. I'm getting older by the day, and there's, you know, the mustache is just testament to it. It's changed me. You know, I listen to NPR and read the newspaper. But No, yeah. So I am on TikTok. I haven't made any content
You know what? I think
but,
that's okay. I spend too much time on TikTok, so
you know,
you know what? Maybe I should be more like you.
well, I
in
spend
that
too much
regard.
time on Instagram. That's the millennial Gen Z differential.
True. I think I do both, so that's too much. But
That's
anyway,
fair.
thank you so much for just joining us today.
Thank you.
Go see Sam as Mr. Carney and A Man of No Importance here at SpeakEasy Stage Company. Thanks for listening and have an amazing day. You've been listening to Broadway Corner with Ashley Haw. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.